Welcome to another episode of Books and Bytes.
Today we're setting aside the usual reads for something. Well, something truly profound.
That's right. Here on Books and Bytes, our mission is always to take sources, or like today, a single powerful poem, and really unearth those crucial nuggets of knowledge and insight.
We try to offer you a genuine shortcut to being well-informed, cutting through the noise and information overload that comes with tackling complex subjects.
And for this deep dive, we're embarking on a really fascinating journey into a piece of literature that's incredibly thought-provoking. Allama Iqbal's Urdu poem, Iblees Ki Majlis-e-Shura,
which translates quite strikingly as the Council of Satan. We've got excerpts here from a complete translation, and honestly, it presents this incredibly intricate, strategic, and frankly, often chilling dialogue.
So our mission today is to thoroughly explore the arguments, the strategic thinking, and the really provocative ideas inside this poetic conversation. Picture it, Satan and his top advisors in a high-stakes meeting.
Yeah, they're hashing out the perceived threats to his ancient control over humanity and figuring out how to keep that grip tight.
We're going to unpack the key takeaways, the things that still resonate, sometimes quite powerfully, sometimes, unsettlingly, even today in our world. So let's get started right at the beginning.
Indeed. We start with Satan himself. He delivers this opening monologue, and right away, he's not just, the generic bad guy. He positions himself as the cunning architect of so much of what we think of as modernity.
Okay, how so?
Well, he looks back at his incredibly long game. He calls the world's current state an old game of needs, that phrase. It's loaded. It points to centuries of him manipulating basic human desires, our vulnerabilities.
So he sees our needs, our wants, as flaws he can exploit.
Exactly, like inherent weaknesses, almost design flaws in us that he uses as his primary tools. It's fundamental to his strategy.
And it sounds like it's not just opportunistic either. He calls his influence a deliberate, a cold-blood act against the heavenly host.
Right. This isn't random mischief. It suggests a deeply calculated long-term rebellion against, divine order, a strategic, almost cosmic defiance playing out over millennia. Planned, executed.
Wow, calculated defiance.
Precisely. And then he makes this truly audacious claim. He basically says he reshaped creation itself. He mentions the great maker bent to wreck Earth soon, who gave it a name of Kaf and Nun.
Kaf and Nun, those are Arabic letters.
Yes, and they form the root of kun, which in Islamic tradition means be, the divine command that brings creation into being.
So Satan is claiming he interfered.
He's implying he intervened right at the foundational moment, suggesting that humanity's reality, our susceptibility, might have been altered, maybe even tainted by him from the very beginning. It's an assertion of profound, almost primordial impact.
Okay, that puts a whole different spin on his influence over civilizations. He then takes credit for political systems, too.
He does. He claims he gave Europe the kingship's dream. Think about that. Not just fostering monarchy, but instilling the dream itself, the ambition for that kind of power that shaped the West.
So in his view, he didn't just sway rulers, he actually implanted the desire for kingship.
That's the claim, steering history right down to the core aspirations of its leaders. It's a very bold assertion of control.
And his reach went even further, didn't it? Into religion.
Absolutely. He boasts he broke the spell of church and mosque's team, a huge statement. He's pointing to his perceived role in secularization, the weakening of traditional religious authority, West and East.
So he sees himself as freeing humanity from religious constraints.
From his perspective, yes. Which, ironically, maybe cleared the path for other forms of control, perhaps more insidious ones, to take root. He saw traditional faith as a barrier to his deeper plans.
So a grand shift in allegiance orchestrated by him. And it wasn't a one-size-fits-all strategy, was it? He talks about social classes.
It's chillingly tailored. He says he taught the poor a lesson of fate, basically instilling fatalism, acceptance of their situation, powerlessness to stop them from ever really rising up.
And the wealthy?
For them, he gave the wealthy the wealth's craze great, fostering that insatiable materialism, greed. So it's this dual approach, apathy on one side, avarice on the other. Both serve to keep the hierarchy in place using different psychological levers.
It's an incredibly cynical view of people.
Deeply cynical. And he doesn't just say he started these things, he claims they're permanent. He asserts that the fire's big blaze of riots whom Satan had set ablaze simply cannot be put out.
So conflict and unrest aren't temporary problems, but enduring features he unleashed.
That's his claim. He suggests it's a deep-seated, persistent force, not just a disruption, but a permanent feature of human society engineered by him.
And there's that powerful analogy he uses about trees.
Yes, to plants we watered, caused to be trees. Who can bring that old tree to knees? It emphasizes how deep-rooted and long-lasting his influence is, like planting seeds that grew into these massive, unshakable trees, the institutions, beliefs, societal norms we now take for granted.
That really sets the scene for the council, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If he's built this seemingly unshakable structure, what are they discussing? How to maintain it?
Exactly. So Satan has laid out his achievement, this perceived stability. Then the council starts, and the first advisor basically showers him with praise, reinforcing the success.
What does he say?
He states, the Satan's order is firm everywhere, and then crucially adds, the masses too, like the servitude snare.
They like it. That's disturbing.
It's a profound psychological point. It's just people aren't just controlled by force, but find a kind of comfort, maybe a twisted security, or just willing resignation in being led, being confined, a voluntary acceptance of subjugation almost.
Preferring certainty over real freedom.
Wow. And this advisor elaborates, especially about the poor. The boughs were writ for the poor in fate, a prey without stay their nature's trait. It reinforces that fatalistic mindset. They're resigned, their nature is submission, so no real uprising is possible.
Any spark of change just dies out.
Pretty much. If a wish wakes up ever, would be raw and die. Any aspiration for something better gets extinguished, either from within or by outside forces.
Then he makes a point about religion and politics.
A really shrewd observation, especially for Eastern contexts. He marvels at the constant push hence that mullah is tied with kingship fence. Mullah meaning a religious scholar or cleric.
So religious authority aligned with political power.
Precisely. The idea is that religious leaders, the moral guides, are co-opted or allied with the rulers, the kingship fence, to maintain the status quo and squash any dissent that might arise from faith itself. It's using spiritual endorsement to legitimize secular control.
Neutralizing revolution from within the faith itself.
Exactly. This alliance, the advisor suggests, ensures the nude sword of Monin, the potential righteous anger or revolutionary zeal of the faithful. The moment stays blunt.
Wow.
He mentions the queer view that on a Muslim war is banned in this age new. It suggests a deliberate disarming of that potential fervor, maybe through interpretations promoting pacifism or quietism, diverting energy away from challenging the established order, neutering the impulse for rebellion.
And then this advisor talks about kingship evolving. This sounds really cunning.
Oh, it is. Perhaps the most cunning strategy discussed. He reveals, we gave to kingship the masses' rules dress, a brilliant, cynical insight.
Meaning democracy is just a costume.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Seemingly democratic systems, the masses' rules dress, a nation's council, are just a facade for continued centralized control. He notes, self-conscious now is man with self's ingress. People think they're autonomous, they have agency under this system.
The illusion of choice.
Precisely. But as the advisor points out, the kingship science has a different sense. It needs not a garb of a monarch hence. Modern governance can achieve the same ends as monarchy, sometimes better, without the obvious king.
And the underlying drives remain.
Yes. That a king's eye craves a foreign land or port. The imperialism, the expansionism, it's still there, regardless of the system's label. His assessment of the Western democratic track is brutally direct, whose face is shining but inner is black.
Hypocrisy and hidden manipulation behind a shiny veneer.
Exactly. A system designed to look good while maintaining absolute control. That's the first advisor's take.
But then the second advisor questions this confidence.
Just briefly, but it's crucial. He asks, is this roar in goodness that masses are kings? He casts doubt on whether this democratic roar is truly empowering or maybe contains some unrecognized threat.
And warns about underestimating people.
Yes. And not new mischiefs of underlings. A warning that they might be overlooking subtle forms of defiance, new shifts happening among the seemingly powerless that could pose a real challenge later on. It injects a bit of tension, shows potential blind spots.
But the first advisor dismisses this.
Pretty quickly. He says, a good point. While my seeing eye hails, no danger too there from a kingship's veil. He reaffirms his confidence. The democratic veil is working perfectly, masking control, so there's no real danger. As long as the illusion holds, the control is secure.
Okay, so confidence restored. Then the third advisor speaks. This sounds like a different kind of threat.
A much deeper one, yes. Intellectual and spiritual disruption. This advisor talks about a Jew's wicked role, but it's symbolic. described as Moses sans vision, that Christ sans cross. Moses sans vision implies leadership without true divine insight. Christ sans cross suggests rejecting sacrifice, genuine spiritual commitment, maybe leaning towards materialism or purely worldly focus. It's presented as a perversion of spiritual guidance, stripping it of its core essence. Not literal, but representing a certain damaging philosophy.
And this figure distorts sacred texts.
Yes, is not prophet, but keeps book for a gloss. And gloss here means more than commentary. It's defined as potentially a deceptive appearance, a false or misleading interrelation. So twisting texts, offering materialistic or self-serving interpretations that undermine real faith, blinding people to deeper truths.
And this has wide-ranging consequences.
Huge. The advisor warns these heathen, shameless eyes threaten to East-West nations a doomsday lies, widespread disruption. But the most alarming part, called the worst cancer, is that the slaves have toppled the master's tent.
A complete social upheaval, overthrowing hierarchies.
Exactly. A radical shift, far beyond the subtle controls discussed earlier. A total subversion of the established order. That's the fear presented here.
How does the council react to that?
Well, the fourth advisor steps in with a historical perspective, points to Rome's big halls as a counterexample, suggests history shows patterns of rise and fall, power and decline. Systems adapt, they show resilience.
So even major disruptions have precedence.
Right. The idea is maybe even this can be weathered. He uses this image like, loot they weep oft they grow like pine's tree. It speaks to cycles of human experience, sorrow, upheaval, followed by growth, resilience.
Implying this cancer might just be another phase, manageable in the long run.
Possibly. That even radical change might fit into existing patterns, and humanity, though suffering, will eventually adapt and reestablish some kind of order, maybe one still open to Satan's influence.
Interesting. But then the third advisor speaks again.
Yes, and slightly contradictorily, perhaps, expresses a kind of admiration for strategic cunning. Says, I can admire his prudence and care. Who laid bare the Europe's statecraft snare?
Admiring who? Satan or the Jew figure?
It's a bit ambiguous, but it seems to acknowledge the brilliance involved in either uncovering or navigating complex political manipulations. Respect for the strategic mind, even if it's potentially disruptive.
Okay, then the fifth advisor. This sounds like it escalates things again.
It really does. This advisor starts by massively praising Satan's influence, almost deifying him. Due to thy burning, this world gets balance. When you wished laid bare each hidden face hence.
So Satan isn't just chaos, but a catalyst, exposing truths, maintaining balance.
That's the claim. A necessary, almost foundational force. But then it gets even more audacious. He asserts Satan is wiser than God.
Wiser than God? How?
Says, thy heat in his clay, the world's pomp and show, you taught the heavens fool a wisdom so. Calling God heaven's fool and claiming Satan taught humanity true wisdom, implying Satan understands us better and shaped civilization more effectively.
That's a complete inversion.
Totally. And pushes it further, claiming God, whose duty was praise, rosary, and round, is now due to thy envy, in shame ever bound, suggesting Satan has basically won, cosmically speaking, leaving God embarrassed. It's peak arrogance, really.
And connects this to modern thinkers.
Yes. All wise men of rest are thy pupil, though. I have no faith yet in their wisdom so. Suggesting Western intellectualism, Enlightenment thought, it's all rooted in Satan's influence, unknowingly. But he still doubts their ultimate loyalty or depth. They might be tools, but maybe flawed ones.
Then he brings up that disruptive figure again, Mazdak.
Right, that mischief-monger Jew, the Mazdak soul. Mazdak historically was this radical reformer advocating communal property, social equality, very disruptive. Here, he represents a force tearing society apart. Each tunic gets torn from his crazy goal. Radical, almost anarchic change.
And warns about rapid shifts in power.
Yeah, uses the image. A crow looks prone to seize the hawk's force, how quick the time changes nature's course. A warning that power structures are fragile, changeable, things can flip unexpectedly.
And this stems from underestimating humanity.
Seems so. Being restive, she scanned the sky's vast space, like fools we counted dust of human race. Humanity's inherent restlessness, ambition, exploration. Maybe they weren't as easy to control as Satan's council thought. This striving itself poses a challenge.
Leading to a sense of real dread about the future.
Definitely. Speaks of the horrors of future looking so great. With hills and vales shiver the brooks and spate. A feeling of impending, significant, maybe catastrophic change. The ultimate worry is, my master, that world is going to doom. The world which looks to thy leadership's boom.
Even the world Satan leads is heading for a critical point, where his control might break.
That's the stark warning from this advisor, a sense that things are becoming unstable, even under his supposed mastery.
Okay, so after all these advisors, their fears, their strategies, Satan speaks again, his final word.
Yes, his final declaration. And initially, he sounds utterly confident, almost brushing off their worries. He reiterates his total dominion. Thus lies in my hold the world's pomp and show, this earth, the sun and moon, the skies aglow. Complete control from the mundane to the cosmic.
And plans to stir up more trouble.
Explicitly. Shall see the east and west my game and roar, as soon I warm up western nations' gore. A terrifying plan to intentionally ignite more conflict, more passion, especially in the West.
He still feels he controls the leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Boasts. The pontiffs of church, the leaders of state, my one din's echo for them a dread great. He believes he has both spiritual and secular leaders firmly under his thumb, trembling at his influence.
And modern culture, he dismisses it.
Yeah, sees the modern world and its culture's wind-ups as inherently flimsy, unstable, destined to break, like it's just superficial distraction, lacking substance, and will eventually collapse on its own. No real threat there.
And radical ideas like Muzdak's can't fix things.
He believes so. The callers to whom the nature has torn, the logic of Muzdak to them can't darn. He thinks these ideologies are just surface-level fixes for deeper flaws, perhaps flaws he himself introduced. They can't truly mend the torn fabric of society, so they aren't a fundamental challenge.
But then surprisingly, he dismisses socialism, despite the earlier fears about Muzdak.
Exactly. This is crucial. He expresses pure disdain for socialist lads. How can frighten me, the socialist lads, since long jobless, confused, and loafing lads? He sees them as disorganized, ineffective, no real long-term threat.
So he's distinguishing between different kinds of disruption. He doesn't fear the political ideology as much.
Right. He has a discerning eye. He sees socialism perhaps as just a symptom, not the root cause of potential upheaval, not the real danger to his core control.
So if it's not socialism, what is the thing he truly fears? The threat grave.
This is the absolute pivot point of the poem. He identifies something else entirely. From that nation, but I feel a threat grave, whose heart yet holds hidden embers of crave. It's not political, not economic. It's a latent inner spiritual fire within a specific group.
A spiritual longing.
Yes, a deep-seated desire for something beyond the material. He describes them vividly. Those at dawn who take wuzu with teardrops jet. Wuzu, the Muslim ablution before prayer done with sincere tears, that signifies profound devotion, connection.
And this leads to his ultimate fear.
His ultimate revelation. He knows on whom hidden times are bright. The Islam, not Muzdak, is the future's fright. It's true Islam, authentic Islam, not the corrupted versions or mere political movements, that he sees as the genuine future threat to his entire dominion, the living application of its core principles.
Wow. So that's the real enemy identified. What's the strategy against that?
Okay, so now he lays out the counter strategy. First, he assesses the current situation, finding some comfort. I know this nation to Quran holds not. The old craze for wealth is the moment's thought.
So he sees that many Muslims, even believers, Mu'minir, are distracted by materialism, not truly following the Quran's core teachings.
Exactly. That deviation, that focus on wealth, gives him some breathing room. It's his solace for now.
And he sees weakness in the leadership, too.
Yes. In dark nights of east, this point I behold, the sleeves of Harem Sheikh's snow-white handhold. Referring to religious leaders, especially in the East, perhaps connected to holy sites, he implies a lack of genuine spiritual purity, moral integrity. This internal corruption comforts him as it stifles potential awakening from within.
But underneath that comfort, there's still fear.
A deep fear, he admits. I am but afraid that modern age needs may not force this age to know prophet's creed. The paradox is that the very crises and challenges of modernity might push people back to the prophet's core teachings, seeking real solutions. That return to fundamentals terrifies him.
Why specifically? What about the prophet's creed is so dangerous to him?
He spells it out, issues a stark warning. Beware. 100 times from the Prophet's Act. It guards women honor, makes man perfect. He sees the teachings as profoundly transformative, empowering women, building integrity and moral strength in men. Qualities that directly oppose his influence, which thrives on weakness and decay.
And it's revolutionary in a social and political sense, too.
Absolutely. He calls it a death knell to those who made the man slave. It ruled out kingship, no beggary it gave. Think about that. Principles that inherently eliminate slavery, abolish monarchy, eradicate poverty, the very systems he claims to have built and maintained. It's a fundamental challenge to inequality and oppression.
And the economic principles are also a threat.
Yes. It cleaned the man's wealth from every stain. It made the rich trustees of wealth's wrong drain. This points to Islamic principles of wealth distribution, social responsibility, seeing wealth not as personal property to hoard, but as a trust. It directly counters the greed and exploitation he fosters.
And underlying all this,
Perhaps the most radical threat, the concept of ultimate divine sovereignty. No bigger change could be of deeds and thoughts. This earth owns to Allah, to a king not. God's ultimate ownership and authority, challenging all forms of human tyranny and absolute power, whether monarchical or disguised democracy. If truly embraced, this dismantles the power structures he relies on.
so given this multifaceted threat, what's the counter strategy? How does he plan to stop this awakening?
First and foremost, obscurity. His law be kept hidden from whole world's eye. The core principles, the revolutionary potential of Islam, must be hidden, misunderstood, not practically applied. Keep it under wraps both intellectually and practically.
And he relies on the current weakness of faith.
He finds solace there, yes. To my solace momina lacks a faith high. That gives him an opening. And the next part is incredibly cunning. Let him be fastened in metaphysics lone, in his own meanings of the Quran's tone.
Meaning, get them lost in abstract debates.
Exactly. Divert Muslims into complex, often irrelevant theological arguments, endless debates about fine points of doctrine, subjective interpretations. Keep them arguing amongst themselves, focused on the abstract, preventing practical application in life and society. Fragment their energy and attention.
This diversion tactic seems key. It continues.
It does. Into what the poem calls Chapter 3, Satan acknowledges the raw power of the Islamic call, God is great. Allah Akbar. He knows it can break spells, illuminate consciousness.
But he wants to twist that potential.
Precisely. Redirect it into what the poem calls theological obscurantism. Keep Muslims tangled up in divisive, distracting questions. Like, did the Christ died or alive from start? Or are God's attributes his part or a part? Highly complex philosophical points.
More examples.
Is the coming Christ Hindi Nasir's dad? Esoteric lineage questions. Is he a mujadid like the Mary's lad? Comparing future figures to past ones. Are God's words mortal or old like him hence? Debating the nature of the Quran itself. Which sect of the Ummah will have riddance? Focusing on which group gets salvation.
These sound like debates designed to divide and conquer almost.
That's exactly the aim described. These nuanced historical debates fragment the community. And the poem warns of the outcome. His dogmas gods he found in his rummage. These obscure points of debate become idols themselves.
Distracting from real life.
Utterly. Distracting from practical faith, social justice, collective action, turning intellectual energy into a tool for stagnation, keeping people away from engaging with the world.
So the ultimate goal is disengagement.
Yes. Satan declares, from a practical life, keep him away. Get all his pawns beaten in this nice way. Keep Muslims out of real-world action, societal change. Stop them implementing the principles that threaten him. Keep them occupied with theory, ensuring they remain ineffective in practice.
And reinforce that idea of servitude.
Exactly. He's better a slave up to the doomsday. Leave the mortal world for others' heyday. Keep them subservient, detached from worldly affairs, leaving the running of the world, its wealth, its challenges, to others, presumably those still under his influence.
Even using things like poetry and mysticism as distractions.
That's the suggestion. The verse and mysticism suits for his deen, faith, which hides from his eyes life's vital scene. Now, these can be beautiful parts of faith, but Satan's strategy here is to use them as a way to channel spiritual energy away from active, practical engagement towards a more passive, inward-looking, perhaps escapist spirituality.
But even with all these strategies, the fear remains.
It absolutely does. He ends by reiterating it. I feel from this ummah lest they awake, being his faith's base world account he would take. His core anxiety, his nightmare persists. If this community, the Ummah, truly awakens to its faith's real potential, justice, equality, divine sovereignty, they would reclaim their agency, they would fundamentally change the world, and his dominion would crumble.
So the final crucial tactic is?
Keep them focused on passive ritual, essentially. Keep them wrapped, entranced in spiritual states, engrave in praise at dawn, and importantly, make him zealot fan of tombs and graves. Channel that intense spiritual energy into venerating the past, focusing on the deceased rather than active, present-day societal transformation based on faith's core principles. intense spirituality, but directed towards inaction.
What an incredible, complex, and, unsettling journey through Iqbal's Council of Satan, just to recap the key points.
We saw Satan paint himself as this grand architect of modernity, claiming credit for kingship, secularism, even exploiting human nature through fatalism and greed.
Then his advisors chimed in, strategizing about how to maintain control using democracy as a convincing disguise, aligning religion with political power to suppress dissent.
And crucially, Satan himself dismissing political ideologies like socialism as superficial threats, not the real danger.
Because the real danger, the one that genuinely worries him, is far deeper. It's that authentic, sincere spiritual fire specifically, what he sees as true Islam, embodying the Prophet's original revolutionary creed.
Right. Those principles of justice, equality, economic fairness, divine sovereignty, that's the potential force he fears could dismantle his entire system.
And his counter-strategy is just chillingly relevant. Obscure the true teachings, divert followers into endless abstract debates, promote passive or escapist spirituality, and keep them disengaged from practical action.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? The relevance is striking. This isn't just some old poem. It feels like a blueprint. You have to ask, how do these exact strategies control through illusion, misdirection, intellectual diversion play out today?
Yeah, think about the political narratives we hear, designed to make us feel involved while subtly guiding us, or the constant flood of distractions keeping us from digging deeper into critical issues.
Or even how societal structures sometimes channel our desire for change into avenues that don't actually threaten the core system. It makes you wonder about that servitude snare. Are we comfortable in illusions of freedom?
This poem really pushes you to examine your own beliefs, where your information comes from, to ask what's genuine progress versus just superficial change that keeps the old power structures intact.
Allama Iqbal's The Council of Satan is just profoundly deep. It's philosophy, it's political commentary, and it feels incredibly timely. If this discussion has intrigued you at all,
we really, really encourage you to seek out the full poem. Read it for yourself. There are so many more layers to unpack. It truly challenges you to think about the forces shaping your world.
You should be able to grab a copy of the book from the link in the description, where you can also find more info on Allama Iqbal and related works.
Yeah, of course, if you enjoy this deep dive into the text, please subscribe to Books and Bytes for more insights like this.
So maybe we can leave you with this final thought to chew on. If Satan himself in this poem sees the spirit of the Prophet's act as this profound threat to systems of control, what would it actually look like for that spirit, those principles of justice, equality, divine sovereignty, to truly awaken and be fully applied in our modern world?
What would the implications be? For society, for power, for wealth, for belief as we know it. Something to ponder. Until next time on Books and Bytes.